Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sharon from the I Am Dr. Sharon show with a special edition. I'm so excited for my distinguished guest. He is none other than Dr. Peter DeWitt. He is a former K-5 teacher of 11 years, also a former principal of 8 years. He is the author of several books, including one of my favorites, Collaborative Leadership. 6 Influences That Matters Most. He provides workshops, keynote addresses, and training to educators on collaborative leadership, school coaching, and instructional leadership. And without further ado, Dr. Peter DeWitt.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you for the introduction.
Oh my goodness. I just thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me, because as I peruse each day through my educational articles, through Facebook posts, I'm always looking for interesting things to actually apply, things to look at and analyze. And then I ran across this wonderful article that you wrote in Education Week entitled 6 Reasons Students Aren't Showing Up for Remote Learning.
Yeah. I should stick with titles that have 6 in it, I guess.
I know, I love it, but you know what? That is funny. You're absolutely correct. But you know, it is just wonderful. And I read actually how you even thought to write this, going through Facebook pages, looking at the comments, looking at all that. Before we even dive into the article, I want you to just share a little bit about your findings of how you even created this.
Yeah, so my my life is one that's on the road. I'm on the road pretty much every week, running workshops and all that kind of stuff, coaching, keynotes, whatever. And all of a sudden I came home the first week of March and it all ended. Like it was just a lot of the work you could see just starting to get postponed and then rescheduled for 6 months down the road, a year down the road. And I have to be honest with you, I understand that it's a pandemic and it's awful, and it's definitely been, it's just a really interesting and somewhat surreal experience, just like everybody else is having. But there's also a part that I really enjoy being home, because I honestly live an hour away from where I grew up, and my mom still lives in the house my dad built in 1959. So I'm very much a small town kind of guy. And so I enjoyed my home time, but I started to get to the point where I was thinking, I do a lot of work around instructional leadership or school leadership. And what does this mean for them? So on Facebook, I'm on Facebook like lots of people. And I had a couple of friends that just invited me to these really interesting pages. And to be honest with you, I don't even think I looked at them first. Like I get invited to pages and I was just like, I'm not going to do that yet. And then I joined one and I looked over at the number and it's at 60,000 members. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, like that literally just happened over the past week. And then my friend Jen, she invited me to the other one and I had 140,000 members. And I was blown away because I was thinking it's like Justin Bieber's on Facebook. It's just like all these people are just converging. And that alone to me was a story. I'm always looking for common themes. I've been writing the Finding Common Ground blog for Ed Week for 9 years. So I'm always listening to conversations, seeing what comes up to the top, and is that a place where I want to go? So I started looking, and people were so open and honest on their comments and stuff on Facebook that I honestly just found myself going back for a few days. And then what I decided to do was I created an Excel spreadsheet, and I just started cutting and pasting the comments, any comment, any question, any answer that people had, any tip they were giving. And I just started cutting and pasting into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I went back and I have work on instructional leadership that came out in February. And I coded it based on that: student engagement, implementation, instructional strategies, just to see how it would all play out, because I needed to sort of think around it. And that's where it honestly all started to come from.
Wow. And and what I'm going to do, because I want to just show the article really quickly, because you know, I tell you, if we, and again, this was April 26th, 6 reasons students aren't showing up for virtual learning, finding common ground. And so and actually the did you know, that's a whole nother article.
Yeah,
That's a whole nother article. I was like,
it
wow,
is.
it really is. And so I really wanted to look at them by the 6 reasons that you listed. And you definitely mentioned that this is not an exhaustive list. This is just from the data that you collected from those groups. And so I just want to go through each one of them. The first one, and first of all, I'm a sitting principal, so I live this. I'm living what you have written about.
Well,
And
good.
so
Good. I mean, I guess it's good, right?
absolutely, but yes, so it hits it right on the nail. So the first thing you said was no access, and so that could be no access to devices, no access to internet. I mean, a number of things. And while school districts across the country, they've given out Chromebooks, you've done all these things, hotspots, you've done, there's still going to be a certain population that still will have no access. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I coach leaders, and I've learned a lot from coaching. Honestly, I feel like coaching is a reciprocal relationship. I don't go in expecting to know everything. In fact, the greatest relationships I have are the ones that I'm learning from at the same time that hopefully I'm helping them. So I coach in 2 different school districts in inland in California, Monterey County area, and high poverty rates and access is something that they are definitely working on. So the no access piece was something that I thought was really important, because it's so easy to blame a student for not showing up. That's like there's a lot that went in, there's a lot that has come out of this blog, but that whole idea of like, well, they're just not coming online, and let's blame somebody, let's blame the parents, let's blame the kid. And I didn't want to do that, because I really wanted to call attention to the no access piece. And I feel like, I mentioned Common Sense Media because I had seen an interview, and the director of Common Sense Media talked about how many kids don't have access to laptops and tablets. But that's not even that's part of the story, right? Because when you look at just the no access to laptops, tablets, whatever it might be, then on the other side, there's also the no access to the internet. So these school districts that I'm working in, Monterey County Office of Education is doing a fantastic job right now working with school districts and the city buses. So we all know that on city buses these days, they have Wi-Fi, usually free Wi-Fi. So what they're doing is they're actually having city buses park in different parts of the cities for 2.5 hours at a time, so kids there get free access. I think it's so much, we need to understand, and like you said, I was a teacher for 11 years in high poverty city schools. I was a principal in a rural school district. Kids not showing up, it's not just like they wake up and say, I don't want to go anymore. What's the incentive to not show up, right? What is the reason for not showing up? And I think the no access piece, where we can start to think around the equity issues, because this is very much an equity issue as well. They don't have access to Wi-Fi or the internet. Now we're going to put in this place with city buses where they're going to be able to do it for a couple of hours at a time. I think people on the other side of the coin need to understand that, how fortunate they are to just have access whenever they sit down. They have multiple tablets, cell phones, laptops. I think they need to understand that as much as there are people on that side saying, I need my kids to be engaged all day long, there are other kids on the other side that just can't be engaged because not only might they not have a tool, but they might also only have access to the internet for a couple of hours at a time. And if they happen to be in one of those other categories too, because some kids are living in, I mentioned 6, some kids are living in multiple categories, right? So if they are an essential worker, or if they are taking care of their siblings, then their siblings might get access to that 2.5 hours from the city buses. And that student doesn't have the availability to be connected, right? They lose out to maybe a sibling in the house.
Absolutely. And so, it's really, in our daily or often meetings, principals meetings, that's one of the things that we definitely monitor. We monitor where the engagement is, why, because truthfully, we know that as educators, we're a lot of times the first line of defense for the safety of our students. And so when they are missing in action, we want to know. As a caring educator, we want to make sure that they're okay. Before we left those walls of the school, we knew those families that we had to pay very special close attention to. And so
Right.
I'm looking at it from that point of view, because that no access also, could mean several layers of things. And so it is, I think, our duty and responsibility as educators, although we are not physically with them every day, we still have a duty
Yes.
to protect them. I just believe that. And so that's why, for me, that piece is so important. Why are they not engaged? So not only that they're not engaged, but why? Let's find out, so yes.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes I feel bad because I think one person posted a comment like I was verging on teacher shaming, and that's not what I'm doing, because as a teacher, as a principal, as in the role that I have as an author and consultant and stuff, the reality for me is I'm always going to ask why, because I want to know what the deeper issue is. Why, why are they not connected? Why are they not showing up? Why are they not doing assignments? Those are questions that I think are really important for us to talk about, because my fear is that if we suddenly don't care anymore and, just say, oh, well, they're not going to show up anymore, that's even worse, right? And what we also know is that this pandemic isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Absolutely.
So what we're experiencing right now in a day-to-day, at some point we have to kind of go through those 5 stages of grief and get to the acceptance piece and say, no, this is never going to be as good as in person. But if we're doing this for like a month in the new school year, what's that going to look like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I love it. So we're going to go to the second one, which was essential workers. And so I think a lot of times people are forgetting, because most of us are working from home, but there are essential workers out there, and parents are some of those essential workers. So in essence, there's really no one home that's really making sure that they are getting on. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I think that if you don't understand how poverty works, or if you don't understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, then this one might be a little bit more difficult for you to wrap your head around. The reality is we've got parents that are essential workers. And at this point, because kids are out of school, they don't really have any other choice except for to say, you're going to become an essential worker with me. Like, you're going to make more money for the household. It's not that they're not supportive when their child is in school, but right now, with school being out,
Right.
the reality is if there's flexibility in when a child can do work, then it's very possible that they want their children to be working alongside with them. And that is literally happening. That is, just from the schools that I work with in California, but a lot of other places that I work as well, we know that the kids are essential workers. And that means they're not going to be able to sign on time. And here's the thing, Sharon, I feel like it's important for us to understand these factors and then understand where teachers fit in, understand where leadership fits in. And then we can hone in on what's a blended model that we can create with some flexibility, where we can get the most bang for our buck for all of our students, not just the ones that can show up at 8 a.m.
Yes, I love that. And really what you touched on mostly, and I'm assuming high school students really will fit in that bill of, okay, let's have you work
Yeah.
while you're out of school.
Yeah. And it's so I will always probably try to take a deeper look at high school because most of my experience is elementary. I was an elementary principal and elementary teacher. So for me, I might remember my high school experience, but I'm coaching a lot of high school and middle school leaders. So I feel like I want to take extra time to understand sort of the high schoolers' mindset these days. And so you're right, the essential worker piece is going to be them.
Okay, awesome. So this has been a big debate, the third one, the no grade incentive. It's almost as if, because I hear it from parents, I hear it from teachers, the no grade incentive. But this fourth quarter across the country, as we say in my district, is a quarter of support, not a quarter of failure, basically.
Right.
Some teachers actually have a problem with that. Talk about that, Peter.
So yeah, I don't. This one's a hard one, huh? I didn't know that. Yeah. Whew. So the pandemic pages on Facebook. When I started to code them and cut and paste the comments, and there were about 900 and over 950 at the time. One of the things that I noticed come up over and over again was grading and accountability. That's really where the whole blog came from, because I sat back saying, why wouldn't we show up to school? Like, if I had a good relationship with my students, then I would think that most of them would want to come back even though it's virtual. So when the no grading thing came in, I started to really think about that. And this one definitely struck a nerve with people, because what it really came down to for me when I was looking at it is that in schools, and this is not meant to be disparaging because I was in public schools for 19 years before I went into this role, but in schools, there is a power structure, and that power structure is an adult and kids. And some of the things that we have in our favor as adults when we're in the classrooms is that we have incentives. Grading is an incentive. It is a positive incentive if you do really well. It is negative if you're not doing well. And if Sharon is not doing well in my class and I want to get her to not be tardy, or I want to get her to, come to school, then I sometimes hold a grade over her head, because that's going to be an incentive for her to actually come to school. And when that grading policy became a no harm grading policy, those incentives that we typically have, and we have other incentives too, like elementary, you get extra recess, you don't get recess at all. That, like, peer pressure. If Sharon's my best friend and she's doing her work in her classroom, and Sharon is somebody I surround myself with, and I want to be like her, then I'm going to do my work. All that's gone. It's just right now it's not there. It's not existent. And sometimes we know the kids are at home where they don't even have that positive influence from families.
So true.
So the no grading policy piece is something that really rocked people's world. But I want them to think about it another way. When I was a school principal, I was highly critical of high stakes testing and how it was tied to teacher evaluation in New York State. I was actually one of 8 principals in New York State that wrote a letter against the state education department saying that testing shouldn't be tied to teacher evaluation. What I see is that we have this great opportunity now too, where we don't have to worry about grades as much, and we don't have to worry about those accountability pieces. We actually have some freedom to be able to work with students in another way where they can do more creative projects, where we don't have to worry as much about accountability. So that accountability piece, where grading is concerned, can work both ways. And for me, the last part is that if grading is gone and kids no longer want to show up because they can't get a grade, then maybe we need to have a deep discussion about the fact that school is about learning. It's not just about grading.
I love that. I love that. And I have a comment here on Facebook from Danae McCain, and she says, who is teaching the parents the computer skills so the child is not left behind? That's a whole nother layer to that, because we were just thrust upon this. And
Yeah. Yeah. So that actually has come up because I mean, this is really just every day I feel like new information's coming in, and I actually feel really great about it because to me, it's like all this rich data. I've surveyed teachers. I have over 500 from from 9 different countries. And so a lot of this stuff is coming in, and there are schools that are really working hard at trying to create help desks and phone calls home, and they're trying to find different ways to connect with parents. They even like will provide YouTube links, or they'll create 5-minute videos and send it home with link or with screenshots and that kind of stuff. So there are a variety of people that are trying to do those things.
absolutely, there are. So let's go on to the fourth reason: taking care of siblings.
Yeah.
A huge issue.
Yeah, so this one, so I'm the youngest of 5. And so, my dad passed when I was young. And I know when my mom was going to the hospital to see him, my sister Trish really took care of me, and my brother Jody. And so there's an element of this that I really understand. But the reality is also that in schools that I find that I'm working in and schools that I taught in, you've got older siblings that are taking care of younger siblings because their parents are essential workers and they're out working. So the older siblings are helping the younger ones with their homework, helping them with their schoolwork. So therefore, they have a chunk of time doing that, and then somehow they've got to fit in the ability to be able to do their own work. I think that's really important for us to understand, because everybody always says, like, having a fair amount of like understanding and grace and those kind of things. I think it's really important to have an empathetic view and understand that it's not an excuse. There are things we need to be able to do. We still, those older siblings are still supposed to be learning. They're still supposed to be doing some schoolwork and all that. But we just have to understand that the time frame that in which they get to do it might look different than other kids, if that makes sense.
It does. And I say it all the time. Right now, flexibility is the key. Like this is not the time for rigidness,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
So let's go to the fifth reason: bedlam, but no bedroom. And you went into it a little more, because we have families who live in shared housing. We have families actually in 1 or 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
We have to think about all of those things. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So not only might you not have access to a tool to be able to use a tablet or whatever, a laptop, but the reality is you might live in a household that you don't want people to see. And that's very sad that we've got students that are in that situation. We also know that there's abusive households too, right? So that's a part of it too. Those parents don't want us to see inside that world. If you think about it, the present situation that we're in can feel very intrusive, because one of the things that I noticed, not only do we have to worry about the bedlam and no bedroom with students, but what we have to also understand is there are teachers, they posted this on Facebook.
Yes.
There are teachers that live in an apartment with roommates, so they don't even have a space to be able to work. So they're doing it from their bedroom. And that is, think about the privacy issues there. Like everything we've ever learned from a pre-service teaching program or leadership programs, now you've got, if there's a teacher teaching from their bedroom and people can see in, like we know that there's certain etiquette now, because when we're talking to each other, our eyes slip past your shoulder and start to look, what does your office look like? What does my office look like? There's that kind of stuff. So the bedroom and not bedroom piece is really important, because there are just kids that don't have that space that they're proud enough to say, yes, I want you to see inside my house.
Absolutely.
There's shame. And that's something that we have to keep in mind.
Wow. And then the last one. Woo, Peter. The teacher-student relationship. And you know what? To me, this was the biggest one of all. It almost would be as an escape once they did not have to be in front of that teacher or have that, if the relationship was not positive. This was an opportunity for students to check out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had to rewrite that one several times, just so you know, because the point of writing a blog is to not make people angry. It's to make people think.
Mhm.
So I've always been a big fan of teacher-student relationships. Like you, I was a principal. I went to every classroom every morning to say good morning to the kids. I always went into classrooms after that. I studied the yearbook before I even started as a principal, so I could get a sense of who the teachers were, what their names were. My secretary wrote their spouses' names next to their names. Like, there are just things that I feel at my core are really important, and that's the teacher-student relationship. And one of the things that we really have to be able to take a look at is the fact that if students didn't show up, maybe it's not because of the tool, maybe it's not because of their home, maybe it's because they didn't think you really cared about them in the first place. So why would they ever show up online?
Wow.
And I don't just say that from a pointing fingers, because this is not about blame. Like I said, this is about introspection. This is about reflection. I have to think about the same thing when I'm running workshops. If people don't want me back, if they don't want to show up to my workshop, is it partly because of me? Is it something that I did not connect with them in a way? So we really have to put this one on the table to talk about it, because the other reality is, if we go into a pandemic, if we go into a virtual learning experience in the fall, where the first month of our school is blended or full-on virtual learning, then we have to make sure that we're spending time creating relationships in very unique ways with people or with our students, because this is going to be an important part. The interesting thing about this is that I did surveys of teachers, right? And there are over 500. And I asked teachers for their perspective on why students wouldn't be showing up. And the one that had the smallest percentage was, I didn't have a good relationship with my students.
Wow.
So it was really interesting, because when I interviewed students, the relationship with their teacher piece was a much larger percentage. And I think that we just have to look at that. How do we, it's not necessarily that, and this is the thing I want people to understand. It's not that we were mean to kids either. Like, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
It means that maybe that kid doesn't think you're going to miss them if they're not there, because maybe they don't think you even knew their name. Russ Qualia is a good friend. He has surveyed, I think, over 1 million students on student voice. He's done decades worth of research on student voice. And it was something like 54% of kids said, my teacher doesn't even know my name.
Wow.
So, and it's not even that, is it that the teacher really doesn't know their name? Or is it that the student's perception is that they don't know my name? Either one is not great. So it's just, it doesn't mean that you didn't care about the student in your classroom. The problem is they might not necessarily know that you cared.
Absolutely.
And that's something we have to look at.
It really is. And I've said this often, that if ever there was a time for us to Maslow before Bloom, this is it.
For
And,
sure.
we say that often, but this truly is about caring and supporting, because this is unprecedented. we've never experienced anything like this in our lifetime. And just to think, little scholars, they are, thrown into, and I think about my little niece, great niece, who's in kindergarten. She's scared, she's afraid. She doesn't want to go back because she really doesn't understand what's going on. And so you have to think that I'm an elementary school principal. So I think about all that, a high population of Spanish speaking families. So the connection is so important, and not even from the teacher's point of view, but from an administrator's point of view as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we could take a deep dive into all of this. So
I know it can just
when I was a school principal, I used to flip my leadership. So I flipped faculty meetings, and I wrote about it in leadership, but I also flipped my parent communication. There's an element that I understood back then, and this is 7-8 years ago, that when parents saw my face and I created a 5-minute video and just sent it out through Redline, and they got to know me through that. There were certain parents that did not necessarily know me from coming into school every day, but because they saw me as unintimidating through the videos, they actually started to come into school. So seeing us, understanding where we're coming from, that we're not just the law, right? We're really caring adults, and the principal position comes with status, and to understand that we are not maybe like the principal they had when they were students. Yeah, all of that emotional stuff, the social emotional stuff is really, really important.
Yep. And it will be for months to come. And that's the one thing, because we don't know what things are going to look like come the fall. We just don't know right now. But whatever it is, I just feel we need to be making provisions to fix those things that, that we found out these few weeks that we've been out. We have some corrections, some improvements to make. And certainly with summer coming, that we have an opportunity to make it right. So when we have to do this again.
Yeah, this is not I've heard from people that just said, I need to get through the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks or however long your school year is. The problem with that is you're missing an opportunity, because we can all agree it's never going to be as good as in person. We know that. No argument there. But we also, during these experiences, can find our best leadership selves. We can find our best teaching selves. This is where we, as human beings, are going to find out what we really value. So I wouldn't want to waste it. We're here anyway, right? And we're going through this. I wouldn't want to waste that time and just wait till the end of 2020. I want to know what I can learn about myself now.
Absolutely. And one more question from a viewer. They asked, what happens when the relationship was positive, but they're still not completing assignments? To me, that probably will go back to one of those other 5 things, perhaps.
Yeah, it's also, so what they can do, I actually ended up I wrote a blog a week later that did it equally as good, and it was about students, because I surveyed K-12 students. And so they can read that blog, because the reality is the student perception on the different assignments teachers have offered might look a little bit different than what this person is thinking. So for example, a lot of schools went through review, and students said, I'm really tired of going into the Google Classroom and just getting a worksheet and downloading a worksheet. So yes, you might have the relationship, but that's where the student engagement and the instructional strategy piece really fits into that dialogue, because I think you can do review, but it doesn't mean you do review the same way you did 2 months ago. It means that you do it in a way that might be more project-based, or it might involve sketchnoting or creating a TikTok video or whatever it might be, but it's about developing a review in a way that kids can go from surface to deep to transfer level learning, and that's going to be incumbent on the instructional strategies that you use.
Thank you. And that question was from Janie Davis. Thank you, Janie, for asking that. Just absolutely wonderful. And so where can individuals, educators, parents, where else can they find your blogs and writing?
So, well, thank you. They can look at my website. It's just put in Peter DeWitt and in a Google search, and my website will come up. I write the Finding Common Ground blog for Education Week, and I write books on school leadership and school climate. And I have videos on YouTube and all that stuff too.
Awesome. And then social media for anyone who would like to follow you.
At Peter M. DeWitt on Twitter. And then I think this is so sad that I don't know this. Peter DeWitt on LinkedIn. That's where we connected. So,
that's it. Absolutely.
I'm Peter DeWitt on LinkedIn, I think.
Absolutely. I truly thank you. I've always enjoyed your work. I've followed you for years, and I just thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to accommodate this discussion.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a great opportunity. It was great to finally talk to you. I mean, virtually, but we got to talk, so that's good.
Absolutely. Guys, again, this is Dr. Peter DeWitt, just a phenomenal educator, wonderful trainer on education, collaborative leadership, instructional leadership. So definitely, if you're an educator out there and you're not following him, you need to follow him. So Peter, again, I want to say thank you. Stay safe and just enjoy this time home. And I think that's the
Thank you
piece
very
that
much.
we're forgetting. We have to make the best out of this situation.
That's right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.